Alrighty, folks, this is the 23rd video under the Maybe series and the 10th under M&A. And in this video, we're going to be talking about deferred tax assets and deferred tax liabilities in a merger, right? And this is kind of a rule that you need to memorize, and that is write downs create deferred tax assets and write ups create deferred tax liabilities, right? And I know we haven't talked about what write-downs and write-ups are, so I'll explain that, and then it'll kind of make a little bit more sense in terms of what I mean by write-downs create deferred tax assets and write-ups create deferred tax liabilities. So a write-up is essentially when you have an asset on a balance sheet, right? So you have an asset that's worth $100, right? And this is, let's say I bought this asset in 2020, right? So when it's on my balance sheet, this asset is going to be the value that I paid for it, right? However, if another company, let's say a company over here, was to acquire this asset, they need to recognize what the fair market value of this asset actually is, right? So they look at, okay, sure, you paid in 2020 $100 for this asset, right? But what if now this asset is worth $200, right? So they need to take this acquiring company here needs to put $200 on their balance sheet, right? Not the $100, because then think about what would happen. Someone would have bought an asset in the 1900s and they got acquired in 1950, and then they got acquired in 2000, right? Then they got acquired in 2026, and we still have the asset that's $1 on our balance sheet, right? It's not being updated to what it actually is worth in 2026, right? So because of that, when we have an acquisition, right, we need to mark down or mark up by whatever the fair market value of that asset is, right? So let's look at a kind of example, right? So let's say that the target company, let's write the target company here, has an asset that is worth $50, right? And the acquiring company acquires this asset or acquires the entire target company, but they get this asset and now it's going to be on their books for $150, right? Because that's the fair market value. Well, why does this equal a deferred tax liability? It's because you now have $100 more of an asset that you're going to have to pay taxes for in the future, right? Remember, our deferred tax liabilities is a future tax obligation, right? So if we have a write up, right, the value of the assets went up, that means in the future, you'll have to pay more in taxes, right? So doesn't this sound like a liability, right? In the future, we have some obligation to pay more, right? So that's why a write-up, creates a deferred tax liability, right? Let's look at the opposite example, right? We have company B with a asset that's worth 150, and that gets acquired, and it's decided that it's actually not worth 150, it's actually worth $50, right? Well, now we have a write down, right? So if we have a write down, then we're going to have to pay, going to have to pay less in taxes in the future, and that is a asset, right? Particularly, it's a deferred tax asset, because we have to pay less in the future. We'll be able to write, like, we'll have to pay less in taxes at some point in the future, right? So just to kind of refresh, right? If we have a write down, right? Sorry, I'm like scrolling all weird. If we have a write down, that means that we're going to have to pay less in taxes in the future. That means that's going to be a deferred tax asset. If we have a write up, right, a write up, that's going to lead to more taxes in the future, and that's going to lead to a deferred tax liability, right? So this is a question that comes up from time to time around, especially if you're recruiting in like the M&A group, right? As to, oh, why do deferred tax liabilities get created in a merger? And then you kind of explain that, oh, whenever an acquisition occurs, you have to mark up the assets to the fair market value. So if there's a markup, there's going to be a future tax liability, right? So that's essentially the concept, and hopefully it's not too confusing. So we'll hop into the next one.